Thanks for watching my dad's videos. His name's Derek and he makes music as Cloudchord, like his hat.
I'm also a guitarist and Ableton certified trainer. Every Tuesday I upload new videos, so if you learned something, be sure to
like and subscribe. And his hat is really cool.
Alright everybody, here's the set. You will be able to download this set if you like. So let's look at the 4 different ways that I make dive bombs inside Ableton Live. So the first one, this little stem I made called Big If True, let's check it out. Cool. Now, let's do a slow dive bomb and then a fast. Check it out. Now the fast. And all of them, both of them, have a little dub delay after that, like this. Sounds nice. Here it is on the slow with a dub. Cool. So these are really cool for transitions and that kind of stuff. So what I want to do more than inspect every little piece of the device in here, like this one we're using, beat repeat and the fade to gray. You can find tutorials that unpack a lot of that. What I really want to talk about is how I made this rack and what I was going for. So essentially I was building this one so that I could map it to some kind of MIDI pedal on the floor. So in my live set, I have Keith McMillan's Soft Step, and Super Fast is mapped to one button, and Super Slow is mapped to another button. And I can just use those for phrasing where I can step on it. Okay, so I made these in a rack for all you to see because it's just a little easier if I can map it to a knob and you can see what's turning on, right? And also you can do these in post-production, so you don't have to do it while you're playing live, or you could do it on things that aren't guitar, so you're welcome. All right, so really what's happening here, for those of you that don't know about macros, let's start at the top of the chain, okay? So over here in my macros, we basically just have device on for the super fast and the super slow. So each one of these is a different instance of beat repeat. So they're beat repeat racks. And the super fast, just as soon as it gets to the number 2 on this knob, it turns on the whole super fast rack like that. So, and it stays on the whole time, so I can't get to another side and unintentionally it turns off, unless that's something that I wanted. And if that is something that I wanted, I can go over here and I could make this a lower number, like 120, and if I get to a certain point, then it will turn back off. So if I watch, I go out of mapping here, and boom, now it's off when I get far enough. Cool, but really, I just want them on as soon as I work it. So if you put it on 2, then 1 is off, and then 2 and everything else is on. So see, it turns that rack on. Same with the slow, it's just the same idea. And then my trails knob is mapped to the fade of the fade to gray. So a couple things about each one of these racks here. Let's look at the first one, the fast one. The things that make this really work are number 1, the repeat function on, 2, the pitch decay, and then 3, the small grid, okay? So you'll see here inside of this rack, there are some macros pertaining just to that rack that don't get mapped out to the grand, you know, the main rack. So really the things that I mess with inside of this are the grid selection. So we could go slower, or we could go super fast. Cool. And so if we open up a little bit more, I have a little bit of EQ in here depending on what instrument that you're working on. So I can boost or I can lower the lows. For example, when I'm playing live, I a lot of times pull some of the lows because when it gets down really low, I don't want too much there. We can kill the mids. Sometimes I do this too. I notice that there's a lot of like sensitivity or honkiness between like 1700 and 2500 on my guitars and the clean sounds. So sometimes I'll have kill mids on so that it just doesn't hurt your ears when you're doing that kind of thing. Cool. So yeah, feel free to check this out. This also turns on and off the filter, and then you could mess with that. All right, and then last but not least, the nitrous hit actually turns on the pitch decay. So without the nitrous hit on, sounds like this. Right, and then we do this. Boom. And last but not least, we have this envelope right here. See, throwing is affecting this envelope. And the focal point takes it out. So you could use various filter shapes. So cool. I don't use the filter a ton of it. This was initially a rack that I bought or got online by Terakith. I'll put his name in the comments, or her, I can't remember, he or she. But that producer had some kind of rack, well, it must have been like 8 years ago, that kind of gave me my jump start for some of these settings. Cool. And then we go to our super slow, and really the only difference is that it's on a slower loop length. So it's not all that much different. You could easily just have one of these and maybe map your loop length to over here and go speed. Okay, if we look at slow, turns the slow on, really the main difference is that just the loop length, which is this grid here, which is how fast, how the size of the samples that we're chopping up for this dive bomb. Because really what we're hearing is just a repeating note that's going down in pitch. Wrong one. So kind of interesting. At some point I'll go through my live set, but both of these are set to pressure mode, so they're only on when I'm holding them down, and then as soon as I lift them up, they turn off. That's because it's a little more tactile, like a whammy bar that way, where you can just go for it and then you let it go and you're not using it anymore. So cool. So that is the digital dive bomb 1. Just right at the end here, we have the fade to gray, everyone's favorite. And it's just an EQ3 and a delay, and then I have a compressor that turns on and off to work with the sidechain. So if we go back here, so let me minimize all these, and just real quick you can see the fade to gray in action. So as you can see, pulls the mids, the frequency, the high frequency and the low frequency are turning in towards each other. And then our dry, wet, and our feedback are increasing. And then the threshold for the sidechain is turning down. That is all mapped to macro 3 of the final rack. So that right there is that sound I'm going for. All right, number 2, using the frequency shifter. This one gives us more of like an R2D2 kind of dive bomb than the last one does. The last one was like a very digital version of a dive bomb. So let's hear just this little bit dry. All right, now let me mess with the frequency shifter. So once I get down low and the dry wet is on 100% here, that is where I feel like we really get cooking. I could also mess with the amount of LFO here. Maybe make it a little bit faster. Let's see how that sounds. You can hear it here. It's kind of toggling back and forth, right? So, I'd say this one is a little bit less like your traditional dive bomb than the first one, but I wanted to look at the second because you can get frequency shifter inside the lower levels of live. You don't have to have Suite for it. So I wanted the first two to be things that almost anybody could access. Cool? So really what's happening here in our macros is that the frequency is mapped to 1 and it's just in reverse effect. So when it's minimized all the way to 0 or to 1, then it's at the top frequency, the highest. And then when it's all the way at 127, it's at the lowest. And so I can manipulate those right here. And I kind of had to mess with it a little while. And then the dry wet is just linear with this macro, and that it starts at 0 and it goes to 127. I also just realized what I was saying in the last one about turning these on. I could have had their macro to start at 1. I just usually start at a number between 1 and 10. It really doesn't matter because it's just all about tactile and getting a feel, and you might edit your automation after anyway, so it doesn't need to be a huge deal. Cool. We call that shallow knowledge versus deep knowledge. Shallow knowledge you can look up in a book like that. Deep knowledge, you must have the experience and wisdom to know it. Anyhow, let's look at this thing here. At the tail end of it, we got another tail. Cool. So this is, years ago, I went to an Gates Ableton live workshop, and I believe he had a plugin called Reverb Freezer. Over the years, I've messed with it a bunch. It's an EQ and then a reverb that is basically just turning the freeze on, and then it starts to wiggle because of the auto pan the more you do it. So the amount is mapped to our macro here. So this macro turns on the freeze button, and then the more you go, the more auto pan you have. And also sometimes I map the thresholds to the sidechain. Hey, look, time to upgrade. Here we go. Cool. And if I want to, I could sidechain this to the sidechain. And actually, let me do this right in front of you so you can see how you would do it. So then I would need to map this. I need to map my threshold to number 1. And then we want to do it opposite here. We want our default position 0 to be at the top of the threshold, and then we want it to go down. So how about we start with like -30, and let's see how that sounds. Cool. I might change my ratio up a little bit and then go like this. There we go. So now we got the wiggle, the fast wiggle of the auto pan, and then the pump of the sidechain. So let's combine our frequency shifter and our reverb freezer called Step Into the Freezer. Leave me a comment if you know what that is a reference to. All right, here we go. Now we're getting into that R2D2 kind of thing. But let me pull the LFO a little bit. Alright, so if you wanted that to be even more extreme, you could mess with your dry wet and maybe have it start at a higher number. Let's see what that sounds like. So much earlier on in the signal chain, it starts to become the entire signal. So cool. So that's number 2. That's using the frequency shifter and a reverb freezer for some R2D2 style dive bombs. All right. Dive bomb technique number 3, clip modulation. Let's listen. Word up, and then just came back, right? And then we got stuff we can do like this towards the end. All right, so let's look at each one of these ways. This is, I kind of adapted or adopted these techniques from hanging out with some like just real beat maker chopping kind of people. My friend Michael Menert was kind of influential on me of just chopping up or affecting actual audio clips in the arrangement view. I hadn't done a ton of that before hanging out with him. All right, so check it out. If we go into our envelopes box right here, unfold that, look at what we have. Yours may look something like this in the beginning, just say mix track panner. So what we're doing is we're not creating any kind of automation over here, like in volume or anything like that. We're actually doing it inside the clip. So if the clip plays in session view or later on in the tune or whatever, it's still going to happen because it's happening internally inside the clip. And how we do that is we select this clip and then you have these variables. So it's pretty simple and you could just go to transposition. So let me just delete that and let's make a new one. So how about I just go right here, right now, right click. I can put it on like quarter note. Good. And then I can do a right click again to bring up that context menu and I can just insert a shape. So sound like this. That's going to be crazy. Right. That's crazy, right? Too much, but we could move it up a little bit. Wow. Look at that. So let's bring that one down. Cool. So you could, if you wanted to happen at the same place every time, we could duplicate it. And then we could, you know, change the shapes if we want to. Like that. Cool. So that's what I do a lot of times, maybe at the end of a phrase to get something like, let me just go back to here. You know, and I could have just made this more musical like I did with the last one and just kind of. Cool. And it's right in there. So like if I duplicate this track, it's going to happen at the same place. If I drag it out far enough. Cool. Clip modulation. All right. Second one here is dealing with clips is literally now this is transposition automation. I'm just actually like I stuttered it. So I just took the same, let me take that off, follow there. I just took the same clip. Cool. And then I just duplicated it so it stuttered. Boom, 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 boom. It's Command D, right? If you want to do that. And then for each one, I just went in and you can look at this transposition down here. It just goes down lower and lower. You know, and then if I wanted to, I could maybe consolidate them, Command J, and then I could do something inside there. Well, check this out. We could do a double. So now that we've burned that initial automation in, we could, how about try we we try to offset it. You know what I mean? Or make it go even further down. All right, so to review, number 3, we got modulation inside our clip envelopes. And then we have automation using the transpose knob. All right, last but not least, down here, clouds repitch. Let's listen unaffected. And then very much like a record stop, right? Pretty cool. Super fast. When I first turned it on, it was so fast, it just basically stopped it. It sounded like I muted the audio, right? But make it longer. Also, I don't know if you can hear there's a filter in there. Check it out. I'll make the drop duration longer. Yeah, hear that? So we got no low frequencies after a little while. So that one was cool to make. So let's open it up. Funny story about this. So this is actually a Max for Live patch that I messed with. It's the pitch drop. We all love that one, right? Fun facts, South by Southwest 2014, I had this in my guitar chain and I was playing a packed rooftop and I went to go do a dive bomb and it froze my whole computer. It was amazing. My good friend Jesse Breda, I think, jumped on the decks and played like 3 songs while I had to restart my computer. Good stuff. On the job training. All right. So, yeah. So we got this Max for Live device called Pitch Drop, which is basically like the record stopping kind of effect. Duration just means like how fast it goes down in pitch. And then activate drop just turns it on. And then you have sharp or soft as to how you want that curve. Right now I have it on sharp, so it's a little more obvious. Oh, let me turn that drop duration back up. So now I have it on 2 measures because I have the sync on, right? So if we did soft, it'll be... Yeah, it's more gentle of a curve there. Cool. So look, as you can see, we've got all kinds of stuff happening here. All right, so what happens, so drop duration, that's pretty straightforward, right? You can see those 3 knobs. But really with the dive bomb turning on, so first of all, let's go to our macro maps. What's happening here is... So basically with this knob, it activates the drop at once. It also moves the frequencies and the resonance higher. So we get more of an obvious filtering effect over time. And then to help with all that, because what happens a lot with these, specifically with pitch drop, is that we hear a decrease in volume over time. So having the threshold go down to kick in the compressor and then turning the makeup allows it to have more of a uniform volume the whole time. So let's listen to that again. Well, we gotta turn that drop duration up. Here we go. I mean, it's cool, its own lo-fi effect right there. Be kind of cool to like start a beat on one pitch and then like when the actual beats come in, you're at a different pitch and everything's harmonized to that. Like, know what I'm saying? So this is a pretty neat one. Let me see if I'm missing anything. You could also turn the sync off and you could have it in milliseconds. I tend to have most of my things like that synced to the BPM because I like things to be, at least to start with, some kind of rhythmic alignment with the BPM since I do beat related music. Cool. So to recap, we had beat repeat, frequency shift, clip modulation and automation. and then pitch drop inside Max for Live. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching my dad's videos. His name's Derek and he makes music as Cloudchord, like his hat.
I'm also a guitarist and Ableton certified trainer. Every Tuesday I upload new videos, so if you learned something, be sure to
like and subscribe. And his hat is really cool.